just beyond saying hello to everybody and welcome back after a month off, let's jump right in. The first agenda item is to take attendance, and this is Charlie Klippel here.
Thank you. And then Paul Philpott.
Here.
CC Woods.
Here.
Thomas McNeil.
Here.
Frank Rader.
Here.
Victoria Veltri.
I'm here. Good morning.
Good morning. Stephen Hernandez.
Stephen Hernandez here.
Okay. Matthew Brackman.
Here.
Able just joined. Thank you. Commissioner Dietrich Gifford from DSS.
Present.
Thank you. Claudia Gualtieri on behalf of Acting Secretary Jeffrey Beckham from OPM. Theodore Doolittle from OHA. Caroline Zambetti on behalf of Commissioner Nancy Navarrete from DMS.
Here.
Good morning. Paul Lombardo on behalf of Commissioner Andrew Mays, Connecticut Insurance Department.
Here.
Thank you. And Deputy Commissioner Heather Aaron on behalf of Commissioner Manisha Jutani from DPH.
Here. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. And then could I ask the staff to introduce themselves as well? Thank you.
Good morning, James Michel, CEO of Access Health Connecticut.
Good morning, all. Tony Crow, Chief Operating Officer at Access Health Connecticut.
Good morning, Daryl Jones, Director of Finance, Access Health Connecticut.
Good morning, all. Susan Rich-By, Director of Legal and Governmental Affairs at Access Health Connecticut.
Morning, Kelly Cody, Carrier Product Manager, Access Health Connecticut.
Good morning, Janelle Maloney, IT Director.
Good morning, John Carbone, Director of Shop and Product Development.
Good morning, Tammy Hendricks, Director of Health Equity and Outreach, Access Health Connecticut.
Good morning, Glenn Jurgen, Director of HR, Access Health Connecticut.
Mr.
Thank
Chairman,
you.
Thank you.
Thanks to all of you. The next item is a public comment, and we do have a public comment. It's a little extensive, but I'll read it into the record so that we all have it. It is a letter from CBIA, specifically from Wyatt Bosworth. And he captions it's testifying in opposition to the proposed $2.8 million assessment increase. He writes, "My name is Wyatt Bosworth. I'm Assistant Counsel for CBIA, the Connecticut Business and Industry Association. CBIA is Connecticut's largest business organization with thousands of member companies, small and large, representing a diverse range of industries across the state. 95% of our member companies are small businesses with less than 100 employees. Thank you for the opportunity to comment on the AHCT Finance Committee's proposal FY23, FY24 budget, and the associated recommendation to increase the assessment rate from 1.65% to 1.8%. CBIA is strongly opposed to this assessment increase, as it increases the cost of health insurance that our small business members provide for their employees. The rising cost of health insurance continues to be a major issue for Connecticut small employers. Recent survey of our membership, 90% of our members reported offering health insurance to their employees. 98% responded reported they were very or somewhat concerned with rising healthcare costs. Even though small businesses are not required under the ACA to offer health insurance to their employees, many do so because a healthy workforce not only improves our employees' lives, it improves our employers' ability to retain talent and foster happy, productive, and prosperous workplace, but quite frankly, it's the right thing to do. The proposed assessment increase comes only months after the Connecticut Insurance Department approved health insurance premium rate increases for the small group market. In that market, DOI approved rate increases by an average of 6.7%, with some plans seeing as high as 15% increases. The increasing cost of employer-sponsored health care due to yearly premium increases and assessments has resulted in many businesses shifting the cost to their employees, and in some cases, businesses simply stop offering coverage. According to OHS, Connecticut worker contributions to employer-sponsored insurance premiums have grown 2.5 times faster than personal income since the year 2000. Assessments and taxes continue to be a major driver in overall insurance costs for individuals and small businesses. Recent data acquired from the health carriers shows fully insured plans incur $359.6 million in assessments, taxes, and fees annually. Self-insured plans incur $74 million annually. This results in a per member cost in the fully insured market of $591 annually and $54 annually for the self-insured market. The proposed assessment increase before you today would add $2.8 million to the $359.6 million that fully insured plans already pay. Given the large burden of assessments and the recent premium increases placed on small businesses, we respectively urge the board to reject the AHCT Financial Committee's recommendation to increase the exchange assessment by $1.4 million annually. Small businesses are facing record workforce shortages, massive unemployment fund obligations, and a shaky economy. This assessment will only exacerbate those problems and make it harder for small business to survive. Thank you. He provides a couple of footnotes to illustrate the numbers that he quoted in the penultimate paragraph. I'll omit those, but we'll include the whole letter in the record. Thank you. I think with that, unless there's any comment on that letter, we will move to vote the minutes from last meeting. Could I get a motion to approve the minutes? If there's no discussion, if there is discussion, please let me know. No discussion. Could I get a motion to approve the minutes from our last meeting? February.
Paul, so moved.
Tom McNeil, seconded.
Thank you, Tom. Roll vote. This is Charlie Klippel, yes.
Paul Philpott,
Yes.
Claudio Gualtieri,
Yes.
Dietrich Gifford,
Yes.
Ron Rader,
Yes.
Steven Hernandez,
Yes.
Peter Doolittle,
Yes.
CC Woods,
Yes.
Thomas McNeil, Mr. McNeil,
Yes.
thank you, Victoria Beltry,
Yes.
and Matthew Brackman.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you all. James, I then yield the floor to you for an update on the activities of the exchange.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Once again, I'm James Michel, the Chief Executive Officer of Access Health Connecticut, and I would like to welcome all of you to our April board meeting of the Board of Directors for Access Health. Before we share our planned presentation, I have a few updates for the board. Since we last met, Access Health Connecticut was awarded by the Hartford Business Journal as being among the best places to work in Connecticut. This is a significant achievement, and I'd like to say thank you to our staff and our board for all you do to make Access Health Connecticut a place where everyone has a purpose, feels connected to our mission-driven work, and contributes to our award-winning company culture. A big part of our culture is understanding that the work we do has a direct impact on the residents of Connecticut. And the Broker Academy is an exciting initiative that is extending that opportunity by making a difference in the communities the underserved communities. I'm excited to share that we have more than 130 applicants for the program. We will continue to accept applications until May 2nd before classes begin on June 1st. And we are currently in the process of interviewing candidates, refurbishing laptops for program participants, and have secured 3 venues to host our training classes: the Housatonic Community College in Bridgeport, Capital Community College in Hartford, and Gateway Community College in New Haven. Thank you all for your ongoing support as we seek to establish new and innovative ways to work in pursuit of our mission. We'll begin our presentation this morning with a detailed budget report from Darrell Jones, our Director of Finance. As you may know and have heard, Access Health Connecticut made a request during the Finance Committee meeting last week for a modest increase to the assessment rate. The assessment revenue has declined over the last few years, primarily because of the shift in premium dollars from fully insured small group products to self-insured and self-funded products. To make up for the shortfall in revenues, we have leveraged greater operational efficiencies and reserve funding. We worked with Julie Andrews of Wakely Consulting on an analysis to ensure the impact to our customers would be minimal, in most cases beneficial. You will hear from Julie Andrews and Darrell shortly. However, I want to point out that Access Health Connecticut has not increased the assessment rate over the last 7 years. And even with the increase, we will still have the lowest assessment rate in the entire country. We believe the budget presentation will help illustrate the necessity behind the requests and support our ongoing work in service of our customers and our mission and vision. Following the Finance Committee update, Susan Richby, Director of Legal and Government Affairs, and Kelly Cote, Carrier Product Manager, will share recommendations to the board on behalf of the Health Plan Benefits and Qualification Advisory Committee. The committee has been working hard since the beginning of the calendar year and has planned recommendations ready for the board to consider for plan year 2023. Julie Andrews from Wakely will be presenting the details of this recommendation, and she will also be available to answer any questions. We will close our meeting with a few updates regarding local and national policies. To that end, we have been working very closely with the Quasi-Public Agency Working Group. This group includes many other quasi-public agencies in Connecticut and has been monitoring Senate Bill 473. This bill could create new requirements for quasi-public agencies that could hinder our ability to act quickly and nimble in a quick and nimble manner. That flexibility has been essential to our success to stand up new programs quickly, such as the American Rescue Plan Act Enhanced Subsidies and the Cover Connecticut program. We have met with the chairs of the Government Administration Election Committee to help them understand the impact this bill could have on our operations and Connecticut residents. We will work to keep you posted on the outcome of this and other bills. And on the federal front, we have been very actively involved with the other state-based marketplaces through the National Academy of State Health Policies, NASHP, in efforts to advocate for the extension of the American Rescue Plan Enhanced Subsidies past 2022. The senior leadership team will be attending the NASHP State-Based Marketplace Conference in Washington, D.C. in May. We have been asked to present on health equity during that meeting. Mr. Chair, thank you for your time and attention from the entire board. I will pause here for questions before we move on to the finance report. Charlie, I think you are on mute, Charlie.
You're right. Thank you, James. And you set up the discussion that will follow. So we really appreciate that. And congratulations on the recognition as one of the best places to work in Connecticut. That's fantastic.
Thank you.
Darrell Jones, I think the floor is yours now.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Darrell Jones, and I'm Director of Finance for Access Health. This morning, I'm going to present the fiscal year 2022 budget report, the fiscal year 2023 proposed budget, the assessment rate status, and the proposed assessment recommendation. Finally, I will give a brief update on grants and projects. Last Thursday, the Finance Committee unanimously approved the fiscal year 2022 budget report, the proposed fiscal year 2023 budget, and the proposed assessment recommendation. So let's first turn to the fiscal year 2022 budget report and talk about what happened during the first 3 quarters of this fiscal year. And then I'll talk about the proposed changes for the final fiscal year 2022 budget. Next slide. At the summary level, how did we perform for the first 3 quarters of this fiscal year ending March 31st? So our budget was $39.2 million. And our actuals were $36.2 million. So we're under budget by $3 million. So why were we under budget by $3 million, mainly due to timing. Next slide. So let's take a closer look at the details of the budget versus actuals through March 31st, 2022. So under the revenue section, under the section for revenues were under budget by $439,000, of which $210,000 was due to timing, and the assessment revenue for the second half of this fiscal year was under budget by $219,000. Under the section for expenses, we are $2.4 million under budget due to timing. So what that means, that projects started late or employees were hired after the start of the fiscal year. Next slide. Now let's turn to the fiscal year 2022 proposed final budget summary. The proposed final budget will remain $54.3 million from the approved adjusted budget from November's board meeting. However, there are changes within the budget line items which will require the approval of this board. Next slide. So let's look at those changes. Under the revenue section, we are increasing the grants by $25,000 for support of the Broker Academy. Next, we're transferring from the reserve fund $440,000 for the all-payer claims database, which was a legislative mandate. Finally, the marketplace assessment revenue declined by $442,000 for the second half of this fiscal year. So under the expense budget, we're lowering salaries and fringe benefits by $345,000 because of employee turnover and lower medical insurance. We added $189,000 to cover the gap for the vacant positions. Then we're adding the cost for the all payers claims database, and we're saving $237,000 for IT enhancements because projects came in lower than expected. And finally, because of the pandemic, our travel is under budget by $50,000. Next slide. So now I'm going to provide an update on the reserve fund balance. At the end of the last fiscal year, 2021, Access Health reserve fund balance was $23.9 million, and our fiscal year 2022 is projected to be at $20.8 million at the end of the fiscal year. The changes during the fiscal year 2022 is mainly due to $1.8 million of unplanned budget items, which were the American Rescue Plan Act, Covered Connecticut, and all payer claims database. So the projected fund balance reserve of $20.8 million at the end of this fiscal year represents 7.1 months of operating funding. Next slide. Charlie, I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Daryl. I would ask, first of all, if there are any questions to Daryl. And if not, then I would request a motion to approve the fiscal year 2022 third quarter budget report as just presented.
So Charlie, before we go to a vote, I'm not saying I wouldn't vote in favor of the budget, but I do think we need to maybe deliberate a little bit more or consider what was presented to us at the beginning of the meeting. Is it possible for us to, have a more deliberate discussion about that, to feel like at least we've hashed it out before we proceed to the vote?
Of course.
I guess I would ask James, do we need to vote for this meeting? Can we vote for it next month and deliberate over this for a couple weeks? Can you guys hear me?
Sorry, Vicky. Can I just add, this is Susan. The votes Charlie is calling for right now and what Daryl presented is for the FY22.
Okay.
And the FY23 comes after.
Yes,
sorry.
Okay. All right. I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right. I meant for 23. So I apologize. I'm too soon. But
let's take it up when we get there, Vicky.
Okay.
So,
but I will give you a motion then. I'll give you the motion to vote to approve the third quarter.
Second.
Second, Paul.
Thank you, Paul. This is Charlie Klippel, yes.
Charlie, point of order, can you call for a discussion?
Oh, sure, absolutely. Is there any, please feel free. This is talking about the fiscal 2022 third quarter budget. Any discussion, please?
Yes, I have a question actually, just
Sure.
on the motion. So what I'm seeing on the slide is a vote, plural vote, approve the budget report. And then my question is, are we going to have separate votes on the non-budgeted additional expenses and the transfer from the reserves? Or does Vicky's motion encompass all three of these things?
Sorry, let's do a separate vote on the second part of that. So let's do a separate, let me just ask for this vote and then a separate vote for the two non-budgeted additional expenses. The
All right, so
440,000 and the 25,000.
This is just to approve, and when we vote to approve the budget as reported, the fact that we're going to vote on two other things contained within that report would seem to imply that we're not. What are we exactly voting on if when we vote to approve what was just presented?
Deirdre, I think you make a good comment here, and because I think and I'll ask Daryl if he agrees, I think they're a little bit part and parcel of each other, right? So the budget that you've presented to us assumes, I think, or I'm not sure how else you'd work around it, that we would also approve the 440,000 to fund the PCD costs and the 25,000 for the Broker Academy. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
So maybe maybe sort of in deference to the commissioner's question, maybe we should vote these together, and then let me ask the commissioner if she, do we have discussion around those two additional pieces? That is the Broker Academy and the mandated APCD cost.
I do not. Honestly, Charlie, I'm fine with it. I was just trying to make sure I understood what I was voting on before I cast my vote.
It's perfectly fair point. And so we're going to vote on both, but then maybe I can style them as a common vote.
Yeah.
So I will restate what we're voting on here. We're voting on approval of the fiscal 2022 third quarter budget report and the inclusion in that report of expenditure of $440,120 to fund the mandated APCD cost and $25,000 for the Broker Academy, again, as outlined in Daryl's presentation. So, Vicki, would you be willing to move that vote?
Yes, I move the vote that Charlie just articulated, the items Charlie.
Thank you. And Phil?
Yes.
All right. So I appreciate the clarification there. I think that's a good one. This is Charlie Klippel, and yes.
Paul Philpott?
Yes.
Point of order.
Nope.
Aren't we
Sorry,
going to have
sorry.
a discussion on those two things?
Yes, you're welcome to have a discussion. Yes, please.
Yes.
Go ahead.
I've heard the phrase mandated. Who's mandating the inclusion of the $400,000?
It was a legislative requirement grant that was passed last year in 2021 by the Connecticut General Assembly.
It's very big of them. I assume they didn't give you any money that accompanied it, right?
No, they mandated that we charge an assessment to fund the
Oh, that we
APCD.
increased the assessment. That's a very good point. In other words, the assessment's going up in part because of the extra $400,000 that's come to become our responsibility. That wasn't there before, right?
Correct.
And Grant, this vote is to, we're going to vote, move the money from the reserves because in the current fiscal year, the assessment does not include any funding for the APCD funding. That
Yeah, no, I
starts
understand.
next year. This year it's going to come out of our reserves in the current fiscal year. Okay.
Right, which are dropping because of that. Okay. Okay, thank you. Yeah, the that database has been around. I mean, we basically pushed for it years and years ago. I guess at the time the state was going to pay for it, and they just decided that it's not as valuable to them. So if we want it, I guess we have to pay for it ourselves. It's a great asset for research, and you know, I totally support it, but it's too bad the legislature seems to have taken the position they have. Thank you.
Thanks, Grant. Very helpful. With that, I won't ask again for a motion, but I think we will just continue with the vote if you don't mind. So again, Charlie, yes. Phil, yes.
Paul Philpott.
Yes.
Claudio Gualtieri.
Yes.
Peter Gifford.
Yes.
Brian Ritter.
Yes.
Steven Hernandez.
Yes.
Peter Doolittle.
Yes.
CC Woods.
Yes.
Thomas McNeil.
Yes.
Victoria Beltry.
Yes.
And Matthew Beckman.
Yes.
Thank you.
So now I'm going to ask you for a vote that probably should also have been incorporated in this one, because in order to, just as James explained a minute ago, in order to pay for that assessment, the APCD cost for this year, the funds will come out of the reserves. So this motion, this vote is to approve the transfer of $440,120 from the reserves to cover the mandated APCD cost for the fiscal 2022 budget. If I've stated that correctly, could I ask for a motion to approve that?
So move, Vicky.
Thanks, Vicky.
Second. Neil seconded.
Thanks, Tom. Charlie Klippel, yes.
Paul Philpott.
Yes.
Claudio Gualtieri.
Yes.
Peter Gifford.
Yes.
Grant Ritter.
Yes.
Steven Hernandez.
Yes.
Peter Doolittle.
Yes.
CC Woods.
Yes.
Thomas McNeil.
Yes.
Victoria Beltry. Ms. Beltry.
Yes, apologies.
No,
Yes.
no worries. Matthew Beckman.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, Daryl, back to you for what I think is the more meaty question, which is the 2023 budget.
Yes, thank you. So now we'll move to the fiscal year 2023 proposed budget. The focus of the budget is on our three strategic initiatives: IT investment, cybersecurity, and health disparities. But in addition, the budget is to continue to support our staff and our mission at Access Health. Next slide. In our proposed fiscal year 2023 budget, I'll present the high-level summary, the details of the proposed budget, and the share cost budget with the Department of Social Services. Next slide. So overall, proposed budget for fiscal year 2023 will be $55 million, which is a $550,000 increase from the prior fiscal year. Next slide. So let's look at the details of the proposed budget. First, looking at the revenue section. Here we're adding $1.2 million from our reserve fund to fund new system enhancements. Next, our market assessments will be $32.8 million, which represents a $1.4 million increase in assessments beginning January 2023. Moving to the budget expenses, we have increased the salary by $473,000 for hiring additional staff instead of contracting out, and budgeted salary increases. Also, medical costs and fringe benefits increased by $350,000 due to increased medical costs and benefits. In addition, there is a reduction of $715,000 in the contractual line because of Cover Connecticut was completed and Access Health eliminated or reduce longstanding contracts by hiring 3 internal employees. And the IT enhancement budget line increased by nearly $1 million due to system enhancements. Next slide. On the last section of the proposed budget is the shared cost with the Department of Social Services. The state general fund will remain flat for fiscal year 2023 at $20.5 million, and the federally funded line item for $688,000 was removed for inactivity. Next slide. And I'll turn it back to you, Chairman.
Sorry, could you go back to that last slide?
Sure.
Can you explain that? Federally funded was removed for inactivity. Can you just say more what that means?
This line item has been in the budget with Department of Social Services for several years now, and it stopped. They stopped utilizing that. It was used for in prior years, used for system enhancements, and they just haven't been using that line item. It wasn't being used, and we had it in our budget, so we just removed it because of inactivity.
I'm sorry. Was that revenue that was targeted for Access Health?
No, this is
so these are our costs, DSS
Yes.
costs. And we had previously targeted those costs.
This was funding
for-
from the federal. This was funding from the federal government that was put into your budget that was no longer being used, and we had it as part of the budget. In our discussions with the staff and finance stuff, we realized that this was not being used anymore for several years. And it's just more as of straightening out and making sure that the budget line items are matching correctly. So this money wasn't being used or hasn't been available for several years from the Department of Social Services, so we removed it.
So Dr. Gifford, this was discussed at length with your finance team.
Yeah, I'll check
And-
in with them, James.
Yeah,
It just raises your eyebrows, right? When you have $700,000 that is unused. I'm sure there's a very good explanation for it. I was just trying to
right.
see if there was some quick. Thank you. I'll check back with the team.
Sure.
Thank you. Matthew has a.
I was just wondering if whatever sort of comes of that, if that could be shared, because I guess I'm not following either this 700,000, if that was, but so if that has not been, if that was revenue that we expected to come to Access Health that we have not gotten for several years, was that in deficit in our FY22 budget and our FY21 budget? Like, I guess I'm trying to follow this line.
Yeah, Matthew, this is funds that would have gone to DSS, and this funds would have helped us help the DSS portion of our operations, mainly in the IT space.
Yeah, the IT projects.
The IT projects that we were not using, that we haven't used for a couple of years. And again, I'm not so sure whether or not the funds did not materialize. But again, this is federal fund that will flow through DSS and that to support our shared costs. So this is not an Access Health deficit. All right, I just want to make sure to clarify that. But this was funds DSS normally would receive from CMS to use for IT upgrades and so forth.
But are there expenses that were like, is there work that Access Health staff does that's tied to that we do no matter what, like regardless?
No,
that
most
we
of
thought would be reimbursed by this money. I guess that's what I'm.
No, this is all going forward, right? This is IT work that we share with DSS. That we have not spent. We have not spent money. It's just some of the enhancement work that may not get done. This is what this represents, and this is why one of the reasons why we take $1.2 million out of our budget, reserves, as Darryl talked maybe 2 or 3 slides earlier, to support our IT enhancements going forward.
Right. I guess that's my point. Is like, I guess that's what I'm trying to figure out. Is that it seems like we had this deficit for IT enhancements, or we're trying to put more in IT enhancements. So I'm trying to figure out, is this like a revenue piece that, it sounds like it's revenue that we were supposed to get to help with IT enhancements that we have not gotten for a long time, but we still have to do the IT enhancements. I'm just trying to figure out how it all comes together.
Okay. So Dale, you have any more detail on this, Dale?
Now, the only thing we had was, these are IT projects. This is for several years. We're talking 3-5 years ago that these projects, it was just a move where DSS, their funding source changed. And so we just didn't use that pot of money anymore. The DSS utilized funding through CMS. They utilized their funding from a different approach. So this line item just basically moved somewhere else. It just was inactive, just plainly inactive. And they didn't use that source of money anymore.
Daryl, I think Matthew's raising an interesting question that I think I understand, which is, so what happened in the prior 2 or 3 years, right? Were you doing the work and being paid for it, doing the work and not being paid for it? It sounds like you keep saying this has been not being funded for a couple of years. Was it being absorbed in the exchange budget, or was it simply not being done?
It wasn't necessarily being, it's not a question of whether or not the projects were being done. It's just more of a where the funds are located. And this was just a federally funded line item, a source of money that DSS would access for IT projects. Over time, that funding source changed to other funding sources. And this one just was still there, but the funding wasn't there. So we removed it. Through our discussions with DSS finance staff, they informed us that this money is no longer there, hasn't been there for a while. And so to be appropriate, to be more transparent, we removed that because it just wasn't being used anymore from just the funding source of where they get their funding to jointly work on IT projects from a different source of funding, and not from this funding anymore. So they removed it.
So is it fair to say that we last year would have received $21,174,000 from DSS, but this year we will receive $20,480,000 something? Is that
That's correct? Yeah, that's correct. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it's still an interesting point. Steve Hernandez has a question.
Yeah, I'm sorry if I'm being obtuse, but it's confusing because is this money that we didn't need and therefore we didn't spend? Is it money that we did spend, but we spent it from somewhere else? Was the IT work that the money was intended for done? Or were the developments achieved? Or I'm confused with whether the money lapsed or we just found some other way to pay for it, and why we didn't use the federal money to pay for it if we could have.
So Steve, the money did not lapse, right? And just money. So this is something that hopefully DSS will be give us more clarity around how they shifted funding sources from feds to other buckets of money from the feds. So this is more, we're cleaning up the budget process by removing this from the budget, because for the last couple of years it was in, but the funding never materialized, and maybe DSS might be in a much better position to get some clarity around this process.
Commissioner, bear with me because I saw Janelle put her hand up briefly there, and I'm just hopeful that maybe some additional clarification. So maybe I could just ask.
Sure.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate the recognition there. So it's my understanding that this particular pool of funding, yes, did go away several years ago, but there were criteria associated with how we could make use of it. A lot of that was managed through DSS, and as James said, we do need to tap into their historical knowledge of this particular funding source and why it went away and or what the specific criteria were. But it was my understanding that in discussions with some of the folks at DSS, that this pool of funding, similar to shared services, was really based on what was the mutual gain from an AHCT/DSS perspective. And although we never really made use of the money, it was mainly because the criteria were never met. So we kept it in the budget on our side, even though it was removed from the DSS budget itself. So that's my historical knowledge so far on this.
Look, Mr. Chairman, let us get some more detail, some more clarity, and we'll forward the clarity to the entire board.
That would be helpful. I think the Commissioner Gifford still has a question or comment.
Yeah, thanks. I was going to offer the same. In the event that we don't vote on the 2023 budget today, I could offer to have DC Gilbert come to the next meeting for some portion of it. He serves as my representative on the Finance Committee, and I'm sure could clear this up kind of quickly. And I apologize that I didn't get the background on this piece prior to this morning's meeting. I did one other thing to put on the radar for the next time. I thought I did hear somebody mention that we took the 688 out of reserves to sort of backfill. So, but then I see a decrease in the proposed FY23 budget. So I'm a little bit confused about that as well. So maybe when we talk about it again, we can clear that bit up. Thank you.
Dr. Gifford, I don't think we took any of that out of reserves. But
okay.
What came out of reserves was the 440 to support the APTC, but we didn't take any money out of reserves for the 688.
Okay, I misheard. Thank you, James.
So, I'm sorry, is there another question? Okay. Look, the votes I would ask for at this juncture, and again, I'm sensitive to Commissioner's comment on the last vote. Really, there are three intertwined pieces here. One is the budget. The second is a transfer of 1.2 million from reserves in order to meet the IT requirements of that budget. But perhaps most importantly, the third one is a change in the market assessment from 180 to 180 basis points from 165 basis points. So again, because those are assumed in the budget, I'm inclined to ask for discussion on all three so that we don't vote one and then come a cropper on the second or third. So let me just ask Daryl if he has any further comment on either of those two items, the transfer or the assessment increase, and then let me open it up to discussion from the group about those two items.
No, I don't have any further discussion. I think unless we're. Okay.
Well, Daryl, I think you have a couple more slides to work through, correct?
So, right, should I go through and just do the assessment presentation, and then because of the order of votes, do it that way?
I would do that. And let me have at least a couple of questions already pending. One is Vicky Veltri. So let me just ask if that makes sense to you, and to move forward, do the assessments, and then come back to think about votes.
Sure. Okay.
So, Vicky?
Yeah, I guess my comment from earlier was feeling like, and I apologize because I couldn't make the Finance Committee meeting this week for session reasons. Like a lot of people on this call probably, but it just feels to me like after getting that letter, I would like to feel like we have a little more time to talk through it and understand was said in it and how it applies to this. And I'm not saying I wouldn't vote in favor of the budget, but I just feel like we need some time to talk it through. So I don't know if it, if that affects the budget vote. Is it critical? Can we just come back next month and vote on the budget, knowing that we'd have a little more time to talk that through? To talk through the CBIA comments and understand that more, and not.
So Vicky, Vicky, you mind, can we get through the presentation about the assessment and its impact on our customers? Then I would offer a response to your question about coming back next month to vote on the budget.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
that doesn't bother me, but.
All right, thank you.
Commissioner Gifford? I think you had a question as well.
Sorry, Charlie, that's a legacy hand. Let me lower.
Oh, okay, no problem.
Like going.
All right. Listen, I think this is the right thing to do. Daryl, if you would walk us through this assessment, because this is obviously a significant point.
Martian, can you go back one slide for a second? Okay, go. You go to the next slide, Martian. So the next part of the budget presentation is on the assessment. We want to talk to you about the outlook of the assessment revenue and operating costs. How has the Access Health been addressing the challenges, our proposed recommendation, and the impact to our customers? So first, what is the assessment revenues and operating costs outlook? Assessment revenues have been declining for the past 3 fiscal years, while on the other hand, operating costs have increased and are projected to outpace revenues on average by 2.8 million through fiscal year 2025. Next slide. So why are revenues going down and operating costs are rising? In large part, the revenues are going down because of the decline in small group market caused by employers moving to self-insured products. While on the other hand, operating costs are increasing because of requirements by CMS, the state, and the Internal Revenue Service. For example, the ever-changing digital environment, the legislative requirement to fund the all-payer claims database, and implement system changes, and to marketing new special enrollments. Next slide. So how has Access Health addressed the fiscal challenges? First, we lowered operational costs by 10% and created efficiencies to meet the organizational objectives. For example, 3 or 4 years ago, we went to our printing and scanning vendors and we asked them to lower the cost by 10%. They had originally built higher costs because Access was just starting out. But now, since we are a more mature company, we asked for those cuts. Secondly, Access Health utilized 2.5 million in reserves for unexpected projects and initiatives, and the proposed additional 1.2 million from reserves for fiscal year 2023. Finally, we have actively applied for grants and so far have been awarded $1.1 million in grants for IT projects. However, to sustain the level of support and service our customers need and to support our core mission and vision, Access Health recommends additional funding for fiscal year 2023. Next slide. Our proposed recommendation is to increase the assessment rate from 1.65% to 1.80%. This will generate additional 2.8 million in revenue, which includes 1.4 million for fiscal year 2023 budget. This will fund the all-payer claims database, address declining revenues, and rising operational costs. Assessment rate would be effective January 1st, 2023. Next slide. How does Access Health compare to other exchanges? First, Access Health has not raised the assessment rate for over 7 years. Second, even increasing the assessment rate to 1.80%, Access Health will still have the lowest rate in the country. Next slide. So, what is the assessment rate impact on our customers? In determining the impact to customers, Access Health worked with Julie Andrews, who is a senior consultant actuary who works for Wakely Consultant and provides assessment revenue projections and plan designs for Access Health. So the impact to our consumers is that the average premium cost before subsidies will increase on average by $1 per month for each individual consumer who buys individual and small group and dental plans. whereas consumers who receive advanced premium tax credits will see on average reduction of 5 cents per month. Currently, 83% of QHP enrollees receive advanced premium tax credit to reduce monthly premiums. Now, I'm going to stop and I'm going to turn it over to Julie Andrews to provide a more in-depth discussion on the impact of premiums. Julie?
Yes, hello. I
Well,
wanted
and
to.
Julie, forgive me for interrupting, but we had a comment from Paul Lombardo, and I maybe put that in first, if you would. Paul?
Sure.
Thanks, Charlie. Good morning, everybody. Martian, can you go back to the previous slide that shows the percent assessments? I think what would be helpful here is this is a percentage of premium. And so I think a better comparison is to identify what the average premium is in each of these states, because you can have a much higher premium in Connecticut, and even though you have a lower assessment fee, it means more dollars, versus in another state that has a lower premium, that 2% in Maryland might end up being less dollars than the 1.65% in Connecticut because of the premium comparison of what the difference is between the two states. It's just a suggestion.
So Paul, we were trying to find what is the closest representation of comparison that we could make. As you know, every state have different meaning of an exchange. It's very hard to compare apples to apples. For example, in Connecticut, we are basically completely self-funding. Some other states get subsidy through state budgets by their state buildings, so they're not paying their own rent, they're not paying their own insurance where we are. So when we start looking at how do we measure against other state, it's pretty difficult to come up with a direct apple to apple, orange to oranges. So we know there are some slight differences. So we just took what are they doing in terms of assessment versus us. When we start going down the path of looking at a very detailed part of the process, it gets really complicated. But we are more than happy to look at that, what the premium dollars are. But we know there are a lot more to it than just a straight assessment and versus looking at the premium amounts. We know that, but because in many states they don't have the expenses that we have, because a lot of them are part of a state agency, or they may be in a state building, but they are paying no cost at all, where we absorb the entire cost that we have ourselves. So this was the best way we could kind of measure up, see how we measure up. But when you get into the weeds, into the details, it gets a bit more complicated. But we're happy to do that assessment and to give you a more detailed picture.
Great, thanks, James.
So Julie may have some further insights into that question as well, at least anecdotal. Before I let her do that, could you do me a favor, Marcin, and return back to slide, I think it's 21, that just shows the decline in revenue? That's helpful. Okay, so between 2020 and 2022, our assessment revenue, where the percentage was flat, the assessment revenue, it looks like it dropped about a little under $3 million. Am I reading that correctly?
That's correct.
Okay, so what we're proposing here is essentially to catch that back up to the tune of about 2.8 over a couple of years. And am I also correct that what we're talking about here, this assessment is on, and I want to make sure I get this right because there's a question from Commissioner Gifford. The assessment is on all small individual and small group plans, insured plans offered in Connecticut. Have I got that right? Or there's probably some refinement to that definition. Can you just remind us what the assessment is on?
That's correct, Charlie. It's on whether it's on or off exchange, all fully insured, individual and small group, individual and dental.
And dental, okay. okay.
Individual and small group, sorry, medical and dental. My apologies.
Medical and dental, okay. And that's the way it's defined in the law, right? It's the those assessments are made or are permitted, authorized to be made by the exchange across those plans, whether or not sold through the exchange.
Correct, through the enabling legislation and also through the policies adopted by the board.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
Commissioner, I was trying to respond to a question I think you raised. Is that satisfactory?
Yes, that was a good refresher. Thank you.
Okay, with that, I think Julie Andrews from Wakely I've been holding her back. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. So as it was noted, all the gross premiums will be going up on average $1. So that would be the small group plans, the off exchange individuals, and those individuals not eligible for a subsidy. But I think it's important to understand how we can achieve a 5% reduction with the increase in the assessment. So I repurposed the 2021 census information that was used for determining the consumer impact of 2022 premium changes to evaluate the change in net premiums for the assessment increase alone. With the assessment increasing the gross premiums, that's also increasing the benchmark silver plan that is used to determine subsidies for all individuals on the exchange. And so therefore, they're getting about an extra $1 with which to offset or reduce their premiums with tax subsidies. And so based on that, in the mix of plan selections and eligibility for different levels of subsidies, that's how we achieve a 5% or 5 cent reduction in the average net premium for individuals on the exchange.
And also, just to remind the board, a majority of our customers, and roughly about 83% of our customers do receive a subsidy.
Mm-hmm. And the analysis was based on the ARPA level subsidies, which are unfortunately currently set to expire at the end of the year.
So, Julia, do you have any sort of intuitive answer to the question that Paul Lombardo raised about, you know, are the premiums in other states sort of more or less the same as ours, or are Connecticut significantly higher than other states? Do you just have a sense of that without holding you to anything precise?
I mean, there are, you know, a lot of differences across the states from plans. But, you know, with application of the small percentages, I think that the difference in the applicable assessment is negligible.
Okay. So that presentation has suggested that the percentage of assessment in Connecticut would still be at or below any other state, still suggests that the impact on consumers would be similarly less than other states.
Yes, less than most other states.
Okay, all right. So thank you. And Daryl, I think we turn it back to you if you have any further comment.
The last couple of slides, and then I can just wrap this up. The final three, go forward for a second, Marcia. Yeah, thank you. Just the final 3 slides is an update on grants and projects. On grants, we have applied to 5 grants and have been awarded 2 grants. One was for CMS grant for $1.1 million. The second grant was for $25,000 to help fund the Broker Academy. The CMS grant projects are in progress and expected to be completed by September 2022. Next slide. For capital improvement projects, we have 2 projects funded from reserve. One is pending approval from the Department of Social Services, and other projects pending review by Access Health. Next slide. Finally, we had 3 projects that were carryover projects from last fiscal year, and all have been completed. And that ends my report. And I'll turn it back to you, Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Gifford asked a really interesting question in a note, which is what can you just quickly give us the impact? Probably not, but if you could give us the potential impact of ARPA subsidies not being renewed on this fiscal budget that you're proposing here?
Mr. Chairman, the ARPA subsidies is more impacts our customers. I don't believe there'll be any impact at all on our budget.
Okay.
The impact would be to the customers, to especially those who are currently subsidized, our subsidized customers.
So they would see less subsidy in their
premiums, right? The
which
net
is to
premium,
say they'd see a little bit more of this rate increase.
the impact if from that perspective, yes. The impact to the customers, those who are getting 5 cents on average reduction, maybe that might go down a little bit.
Okay.
But the dollar impact, as Julian indicated, the increase because of the dollar will definitely be beneficial to those who are subsidized, simply because the benchmark plan is going by that amount, and that's used to calculate the APTC.
Thank you. And Ted Doolittle has a comment. Ted?
Yeah, thanks, everybody. Ted Doolittle, Office of the Healthcare Advocate. I would just add that the impact of the ARPA going away for AHCT is going to be people dropping their insurance. And so the premiums, our premium base is going to go down. Just wanted to make that comment. Thanks, Charlie.
I appreciate that too. So I think where we are, and I'm going to do a little rough justice of, oops, sorry, maybe I won't. Matthew, please, before I.
Yeah, just, and I apologize if I missed it in materials that were sent out already, but is there, and obviously I'm not on the finance committee, but is there, I presume there is a more detailed budget document other than the slides that we have before us that goes into more details about, it's on the earlier slides, there's talk about the positions that were being added and eliminated and that kind of stuff that, you know, goes in a line by line version of the budget?
Yes, Matthew, we do have a detail that we use to run the company, detail
Right.
by departments. Yes.
Would that be? Could you share that with the board?
Absolutely.
I would like to look at that before we. I feel comfortable with the vote.
Thanks, Matthew, and thanks, James. So, I think the exchange is doing something here that hasn't done in its lifetime for 7 years, which is to increase the assessment. And I think you've made a great case for sort of the drivers behind that, particularly that it's really sort of the fact that revenue has been kind of declining under the old assessment, simply because so many small groups are no longer fully insured. They've shifted over to self-funded, or at least that seems to be the primary driver. Nevertheless, it's a change and a significant one. And so we had some, certainly Vicky, the commissioner, others have asked for discussion on that point, and I think it merits discussion. So Commissioner Gifford has her hand up, so I'll start there, but welcome discussion on that point.
Thank you. I had a question on the percent of all insured lives in Connecticut on whom this assessment is now being made. So you just mentioned, and it was in the chart, that, you know, it's a declining number of fully insured lives in Connecticut. And I know I've heard Paul say the number in various forums, but it seems to me this could be somewhat of a death spiral, right? And I wonder if, because the more we have to raise the assessment, may not be the straw that breaks the camel's back, but the more it becomes challenging for companies to remain fully insured, the smaller the pool on whom our assessment will be levied. So, you know, that's a longer term discussion about a stable funding source for the exchange and whether there's any remedy to the fact that it's only assessed on a shrinking pool of insured lives. But for the short term, I was just wondering what that percentage has fallen from over the last few years and what it's at now.
So Commissioner Gifford, are you referring, again, the declining base for part of our assessment is a small group, right? These are the 50 lives and under.
Mm-hmm.
And in the end, they're just, they're doing what they do. They're looking for for reducing their costs. So they're shifting to self-funded products, which comes with a lot of risk to them. Maybe Paul could talk more about that. So that's the part that's shrinking for
Understood.
assessment.
I was trying to get a handle on the percent, like it shrunk from what to what over what period of time is what I'm trying to get a handle on numbers wise.
Yeah, Commissioner Gifford, this is Paul. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but essentially the small group market at its peak had about 170,000 members in it. We're probably at between 110 and 120,000. So we've lost between 50 and 60,000 members from the small group market. The individual market has kind of leveled out, so to speak, based upon what's on and off. As a percentage of the total fully insured market, you know, self-funded makes up about 75% of the total commercial market. So that means fully insured is about 25%. And between small group and individual, that makes up about probably 1/3 of the fully insured market. The rest is in the large group market.
Okay, and our assessment is not levied on large group, or it is?
I don't believe it is. I believe it's individual, small group, and dental plans.
The markets that the exchange participates in.
Yeah.
So in other words, it's the burden of this funding is carried by the 120,000 people in small group and then the individuals. Is that correct, roughly, Paul?
Yeah, so it's probably close to about 220 to 230,000 people that the membership plus the dental plans. And there's about 600,000 total fully insured in the state. So again, they're about 1/3 of the fully insured market.
So I'm very sensitive to the commissioner's comment about a death spiral. This does feel like a death spiral because I think, and it's not just this assessment, but it's been an inevitable move, I think, for these small groups to become self-funded. And unless we can figure out a way to assess their stop loss, I think that's just going to continue to reduce our revenues, and that trend is going to continue largely to avoid other expenses. So I think we are slightly encouraging that, but I don't think we're the primary driver. Ted has a comment, please.
Yeah, Charlie, Ted Doolittle, Office of Healthcare Advocate. Just to build on what you said, the ultimate long range, fix is to go into the stop loss arena. The self-insured products actually can't work without some insurance, and so they have the stop loss insurance, and they like it because it is sequestered from things like this. But it's inappropriate, and that's the long-term discussion we have to have as a state. Just wanted to make that real brief comment, building on your own remark there, Charlie. Thank you.
Thanks, Ted. Vicki?
Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. I turned the camera on for a second. Apologies. So I guess I take all those points. I'm also cognizant we're assessing the same people that are participating in the exchange. So it's just like a vicious circle that it keeps going around and around. But, and I'm also concerned that I think, and I'm not suggesting, and I want to be really clear because when I started earlier, I just want to know more about the comments that were made and have a detailed discussion about those comments beyond just what was presented. And then do something like Matt Brockman, I think, suggested, if we had a little bit more detail on expenses in the budget and other things where maybe could be a narrowing between the assessment value and this, and what we're suggesting doing here today. I think it could be a useful exercise for us. It's probably because we all have not been able to be on every call for the last couple months. It's been a challenge for, I know, Access Health and us. So that's why I'm just suggesting that if it's not urgent, that this be voted on today, to be a little more time to digest things and answer these questions about the value of the premiums in other states. You know, how much is the premium in other states tied to the percentages? What's our detailed budget on expenses by line item and by, you know, are there trimmable places or not? Maybe there aren't, but all those kinds of things I think need to go into a discussion before we would, I feel comfortable voting on an increase.
Phil, you had a comment as well?
Yeah, thanks. I think that my opinion is, I think the board needs to focus on what the impact of our requested or increase would be, as opposed to what's happening in that fully insured market in total. Because my own view of this is that if there's an issue with that market, and clearly there must be to some degree, it's not because of any assessment on our part or a de minimis increase in the assessment. It's going to have to do with the fact that as groups transition to self-funded, those groups are going to tend to be the best risks in the pool. Okay. And so the issue for that people that are left in the pool is going to be adverse selection. And that will drive the premiums up. And my own view is that really is the big elephant in the room, so to speak. So anyway, and again, I'm not sure that this board can do anything about that. So anyway, I think what we need to focus on is our piece of this whole thing.
Mr. Chairman,
just
very
a
quickly.
comment. I would agree with that, Phil. I think let's just call Vicky's question back to you, James, on the time question, right? How urgently do we need to do this? Is it possible to do it next meeting? And if we do it next meeting, then we need to talk about what additional information would be helpful to the directors.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Vicky, we normally approve the budget in March or April because the insurance industry need to know what the impact is going to be on their rates. And this is, and for some reason that we approve the recommendations from the HPBQ in April, so the insurance companies have time to formulate their rates for 2023 to be submitted to the insurance department, I think by July. So this is why the timing works. April, maybe we would, maybe Paul could comment on this. Maybe we could go to May for the approval. So, but the insurance companies need to know where we're going to end up. So
I don't disagree with you, James, at all, but I'm cognizant that the insurance companies have raised concerns about the assessment. So they'll probably feel better if we've had this discussion to feel like we're comfortable with it. I mean, I think they would concede that waiting to the next meeting may be okay, given the fact that they've raised concerns about the increase. But
My understanding, CBI is when I raised the question, so I don't know if that's for the insurance industry or for the small group, but we are where we are.
No, James, the insurance companies have raised concerns to us.
Okay, so if there's been no impact to the insurance companies' ability to calculate rates and submit to the insurance department on time, but Mr. Chairman, I don't see there'll be no impact. We will be able to vote in May. That's fine. We'll just have to get more information to the board, and then we'll come back in May.
Commissioner, let me respond to James, or let me let you speak first, and then I'll respond to James.
Yeah, I was just going to try to clarify a little bit. I agree with Vicky's and somebody else, and I apologize, who I don't know who it was who asked for additional budget detail, particularly about what's coming out of reserves and whether there's any other possibility to offset some of this with additional drawing on reserves. But Vicky, were you proposing an interim meeting just on this issue, a meeting of the board or before the May meeting, or distribute materials? And then I just wanted to get to a process of like, how would we achieve what you are proposing, which I support.
I think I mean, I would kind of leave it to the group to decide, but I would say if there could be a compromise position of a special meeting, James, to make it easier to not wait a whole month, with maybe some materials sent out in between. I think that would be probably optimal for people, but I see Matt's nodding. I don't know about others, but.
So may I recommend that we have maybe a budget workshop with the board? Not necessarily a full meeting. We'll set some time aside. We'll do a poll, see who can attend. Then we will create have a budget workshop with the board and walk them through the budget from start to finish, give them all the history and where we are, how we got to where we are right now, and what the reserve impact. Then we'll take it from there. Is that a workable approach to have a budget workshop with the board that within the next 2 or 3 weeks before the next board meeting?
James, you'd just have a vote the following board meeting, the May.
And then May, yes.
Okay. Vicky, I think that kind of gets us the same place, right? So
yeah, I agree. Although I know I saw Claudio's hand was up, but I agree.
Yeah, Claudio.
Yeah, and I was just going to add, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Vicky. So a couple pieces of information that will be very critical for me that have been surfaced by today's conversation in the CBIA letter is one, we have based the assumptions of how the real world impact of this assessment increase would impact people based on some assumptions under the ARPA subsidies that we know are scheduled to expire. We all hope and are working fervently to try to make sure that our federal colleagues understand how critically important extending those subsidies is. I think it would be advisable, however, that this board has the full context of information of a worst case scenario. So when we talk about a 5-cent decrease for 83% of the people who are receiving subsidies, that's powerful evidence. But if that's not going to be something we can bank on in the future, this board needs to know that. And we need to see, what does it mean in the worst case scenario that these subsidies aren't extended. So that's, for me, a critical piece of information. That's one that was very powerful and persuasive at the subcommittee level, at the finance committee level, that we relied on making this recommendation to the full board. And two, I think we need to see a worst case scenario, assuming that the assessment doesn't go through. Where does the cuts, what has to give? It's sort of, we need to see, is this coming out of additional advertisement and outreach? Is it coming out of critical core functions? How do you make up the difference? Give us a budget that assumes a lesser assessment or no assessment so that we can see how critically important this is for the core functions of this board and the objectives that the directors want to achieve. So I would request both of those pieces of information in whatever workshop or special meeting we have.
Thanks, Claudio. It seems to me there's two parts to that. One is what's the impact on the exchange, and the other is what's the impact on membership, right? So, and so I think I heard James say probably less on the exchange, but we should look at what the impact would be on the exchange. And then Claudio, to the extent you need support for the larger political question of the impact on people in Connecticut, I'm sure the exchange stands ready to help. So that piece, Claudio, very helpful. I think I heard a request for a more detailed breakdown on the budget, and then that 600 and some odd $1,000 piece that was transferred in the past from DSS. Some more information on that would be helpful. Is there anything else that we talked about that would be useful in this workshop in terms of providing additional clarity for the board?
So the only thing I would suggest is we're nearing the end of session. I don't know if there will be time, but to the extent there are bills pending that might affect your budget, James, or that we think might affect premium for people, we might want to talk about it. I don't know. I don't know if that's compressing too many things too quickly, but there are bills pending that potentially could increase
Premiums, yes.
Clearly increase premiums.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know how that will filter into your budget or not, or like whether there's marketing issues related to that or something else, but we should probably want to know that.
From an assessment perspective, Vicki, the assessments are 2 years. Again, we are assessing 2 years back premiums.
Yeah, okay.
But to the extent that there's any type of major changes where Access Health will have to do any type of marketing and outreach, yes, that may have an impact on our operating budget, as last year did for ARPA as well as Cover Connecticut.
Okay, yeah, might be worth knowing that too.
Yep.
Thank you.
Ted Doolittle.
Yeah, to the extent that we are going to be looking at pending legislation that might affect the premiums, which I don't really recommend, but if that is the route we're going down, we should definitely look at legislation that could reduce premiums. And for instance, there's SB 416 pending now, which is, deals with the insurance industry's anti-tiering, anti-steering, and all or nothing contracting. If that bill passes, premiums will go down. So I don't know how speculative we want to get in terms of things that are pending before the legislature, but if we're going to go to things that are supposedly going to add to the premium, we should also consider outstanding legislation that would reduce premiums.
So James, just speaking for myself, I'd be guided by Paul's earlier comment. I would think we really need to start with the internal view. If we can bring in some of these external pieces, that would be great. I think Ted does make a point that it's a bit speculative, but let's do the best we can, but really focus on the internal costs and the internal implications for the exchange so that we can do this workshop as thoughtfully as possible, as soon as possible.
Yeah, so what we'll do, March and send out a doodle poll, provide several dates for the board to select. And once we have consensus, then we will schedule it as quickly as possible.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Matthew Bookman.
Just one thing that I appreciate the path that we're moving on in terms of getting additional information, having an opportunity to have a full board workshop on this. But one thing in particular, because it's come up a couple of times, if there's a way to break out the additional marketing costs related to the special enrollments related to ARPA and other federal unexpected open enrollment periods that we had or extended open enrollments, I'd be kind of curious for what that number is, and maybe there's an opportunity for us to think creatively about finding other funding to help subsidize those unintended costs instead of passing it on as an assessment. I think it's something that the board should think about if there's a strategy we can come up with around it.
I think that's a great point, James. So if it's possible to think about whether any of these pieces might be funded some other way, I would love, I think we'd all love that, right? So it would be a good thing. Commissioner Gifford?
Yes, thank you. Two things. Martin, if you could include Mike Gilbert in that poll for the workshop, then he can come at the beginning at least to provide the detail around the 688,000. Thank you. And then the second thing is, as Rob and James are well aware, and Susan, the state is in the process of reprocuring our vendor for our main eligibility systems. There may be, there likely will be budgetary impacts from that reprocurement. And I don't know the extent to which those are currently embedded in the budget. So I just bring that up because I think that's something we should put on the agenda for the workshop so that the board is aware of the status of that reprocurement.
Will do.
Thank you,
Commissioner.
Okay. So, James, I've thrown your agenda off a little bit here. I'm deferring the three items that relate to the budget itself, the transfer from the reserve, and the assessment for, the expenditure for the academy. I personally want to make sure that we're not slowing down the academy because that's a very small amount of money, and I don't want it to be a hindrance to sort of moving that forward. I think everybody sort of agrees on that piece, and it's not going to make a difference here. Are you okay if we defer that little piece of vote as well, or do you need the money now?
I thought that was voted on already for the county. We were just discussing the 2023 budget.
Oh, fair enough. Okay, all right, then we're good, I think. All right.
So we're going to table the vote for 2023 until May.
Yes.
Then in between now and then, we're going to have a budget workshop with the board.
Yep, thank you.
And then, okay.
Now, Susan, I'm directing this to you, although there's three of you. Does this deferral interrupt the ability to approve these plans?
No, it does not.
Okay, well then, good news. We're going to move to item F on the agenda, which is the approval of the qualified health plan certification requirements. And I turn the floor over to Kelly, Susan, and Julie Andrews from Wakely.
Good morning. This is Kelly Cody, and I will be presenting along with Susan and Julie from Wakely the certification requirements portion of this presentation. Back in January, we had provided to you or to the board an overview of plan management certification life cycle and work that the HPBQ completes each year. So today I'd like to take a moment to give you a little background on the HPBQ participants. The membership represents a variety of backgrounds and interests. We have individuals from the Community Health Advocate, individuals from the Connecticut Hospital Association, and carrier representation from Anthem and Connecticut. We also have a member from DPH and from the SID offering their expertise along with several members of the board. This membership allows the committee to have meaningful conversations and provide thoughtful recommendations when faced with the challenge of having to make plan design changes which are impactful to our consumers. Their main objective is to provide benefit recommendations for the standardized plans that meet both federal and state requirements, but continue to offer quality healthcare options for our residents of Connecticut. Since January, the HPBQ has been busy analyzing data provided by Plan Management and Wakely in support of the 2023 plan year. The committee reviews the certification requirements, including standard plan designs. They've also reviewed consumer-specific information such as present and past enrollment, consumer purchasing behaviors year over year to analyze the trend of metal selection. This group also took into consideration how Connecticut compares with other states for premium, from a premium standpoint, and also from how many plan options are offered within the marketplace. The committee's recommendations will be discussed with you shortly. We also mentioned in January that the finalization of the review of certification requirements for the plan year 2023 was targeted for completion in April. Insurance carriers are advised of the Access Health certification requirements through our solicitation each year, and then determines whether they want to offer plans through the exchange based on that guidance. This document also includes information needed to create the rate and form filings that are due to be submitted to the CID on July 1st for the 2023 plan year. In order for the insurance carriers to have sufficient time to develop their plans and rates, Access Health targets the release date of the solicitation for late April. We will be seeking board approval of the standard plans for the individual market for the plan year 2023 during this meeting today. Julie Andrews of Wakely Consulting will be walking you through those proposed plans. And at this time, one note that the federal guidance pertaining to the maximum out-of-pocket and actuarial value calculator, and also the IRS regulations have not been finalized. However, given the desire to move forward with ample time for the carriers to prepare rate and form filings and also submit the application to Access Health, which is also due in early July, we will be presenting this information based on what we know now, and if necessary, we'll adjust once final guidance is available. If the proposed plan designs are determined not to be in compliance with the final federal guidance, this could result in a need to bring the standardized plans back for review again with this board in the near future. With that said, I will hand it over to Susan to go over the 2023 regulatory variables. Oops. Oh, go back. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Martin. And I'll just try to move quickly as I know we are getting very short on time. Some of these regulatory variables we were sort of touching on in the budget discussion, but there are a number of items that may impact enrollment for 2023. One being whether the ARPA enhanced subsidies are extended beyond 2022, as was discussed. And there are a few other items. There is a proposed regulation that I was planning on speaking to later, which would referring to fixing the family glitch, which will provide, excuse me, greater access to subsidies for family members of those offered employer-sponsored coverage. So that has a potential to increase enrollment, and also the upcoming end of the public health emergency and the accompanying Medicaid maintenance of eligibility, which has extended Medicaid coverage for several 100,000 people in Connecticut since 2020. It will be expiring, projecting it in the next several months during 2022, which may result in large numbers of consumers no longer being eligible for Medicaid and hopefully moving on to enrollment in a qualified health plan. And there's another item at the state level that has the potential to increase enrollment. The Covered Connecticut program provides no cost coverage with a QHP for eligible individuals with income at or below 175% of the FPL, and those eligible will greatly expand starting this July 1, 2022 to not just the parents and caretaker relatives that have been eligible since July of 2021. So all of those have the potential to potentially increase enrollment, while the ARPA subsidies not being extended has the potential to maybe decrease enrollment. I will turn it back over to Kelly.
If you could, thank you. So the information on this slide represents the plan mix for both the individual and small group medical and dental plans offered through the exchange. The left side of the screen shows medical plans at the metal level and the number of carriers are required to submit. as well as the number of optional plans they may submit. For the individual market, Access Health requires that each carrier submit 4 standard plans, but allows each carrier to submit an additional 9 non-standard plans. Each carrier can offer a maximum of 13 plans. For the small group, there are no standardized plans requirements, but carriers must submit a minimum of the 5 plans that include certain parameters, such as inclusion of both in and out of network coverage, pediatric dental EHB coverage. We require 2 silver and 2 bronze plans. This is because we request that one plan must be HSA compatible and the other not. A carrier may offer an additional 15 optional plans, allowing each carrier to offer a maximum of 20 in the small group market. The right side of the screen displays the plan mix for our dental plans. There's no difference in the plan mix requirement across the markets. Access Health requires that each carrier submit 1 standardized plan with the option to include or exclude out-of-network coverage. A carrier may offer an additional 3 optional plans, totaling to a maximum of 4 plans offered in each market. At this time, the HBBQ has not recommended any changes to the medical or dental plan mix for 2023 plan year. Before moving on to the next slide, are there any questions? If not, we can move forward.
Please.
Thank you. So this slide is discussing the standardized plan development and some of the steps that that took place throughout this process, January up until yesterday, to help develop some of these the recommendations. The focus of the committee was to determine how the current standardized plans would need to be modified to incorporate the newly proposed changes to the actuarial value calculator and the proposed state legislation. Outlined here, there are 2 items that were taken into consideration, the HB 5386 and the HB 558. It explains the changes. One is for the addition or the change to the cost sharing for EpiPens, maxing out the copay to $25, and then to expand the requirements for the treatment used in diagnosing breast cancer and ovarian cancers. Because the assessment of the actuarial value and the mental health parity compliance can differ among the carriers for the standardized plans based on each insurance company's own methodology and claim data, Wakely collaborated with the 3 insurance companies offering through Access Health to analyze the impact and to develop plan options to present during the HBBQ Advisory Committee for discussion and vote. One other element related to the plan designs that was reviewed by the committee was for the standardized standalone dental plans. CMS guidance has indicated that the pediatric dental maximum out-of-pocket could increase by $25 due to the adjustments to the Consumer Price Index, specific to dental services for plan year 2023. However, the committee has not recommended any changes to the current standardized standalone dental plans required for both individual and small group markets, leaving the maximum out-of-pocket for pediatric services at the $350 for a child and $700 for 2 or more children. Julie Andrews, Senior Consulting Actuary from Wakely, will now provide an explanation of the 2023 ABC changes and will also present to you the plan options recommended by the Advisory Committee for the 2023 plan year.
Thank you, Kelly. As you commented, there are many regulations that impact the plans and their development. And just as you mentioned, the 3 key federal regulations that apply. The maximum out of pocket for 2023 is proposed to increase this year from $8,700 to $9,100, as well as additional increases to the CSR variations as shown. The maximum out of pocket is defined in statute and is applied by the 2014 limit increased by the premium adjustment payment index for 2023. The second regulation is the IRS regulation defining the maximum allowable MOOP and deductibles for HSA compliant plans. The regulation generally comes out in May, and so we've used the 2022 values as guidance in developing the plans. The third regulation, as noted, is mental health parity, which ensures the equity of mental health services when defining the cost sharing. And as Kelly mentioned, we worked with each of the issuers to make sure that we are compliant with all the plans in the proposed plan designs. And again, as the regulations are not yet finalized, the information as presented is subject to change in response to any changes in the final regulation. On the next slide, besides the regulations applicable to the standard plan designs, we must also use a tool, the Federal Actuarial Value Calculator, which is provided by CMS each year. The tool evaluates cost sharing for several key healthcare services to determine the portion on average to be paid by consumers and the portion to be paid by the insurance company. The percentage is then used to define the plan's metal level in compliance with ACA regulations. For 2022, there had been no changes to the calculator from 2021. However, there were several changes in 2023's tool. The underlying data has been updated to reflect experience from 2018 in the individual and small group market, and each metal's data tables will reflect experience from their base year. Thus, the impact of the data updates will vary by metal level. The underlying data is trended forward from 2018 to 2023 for use in the analysis. Medical trends range from 3 to 6%, while pharmacy trends were higher from 4 to 9%. In addition to changes in the tool, there are changes in the de minimis ranges for defining metal compliance. The ranges are narrowing. However, this did not impact the standard plans, which have historically aligned with the top of the range. The 2018 regulations had expanded the ranges in order to create flexibility and promote competition in the marketplace. It was anticipated that changes would provide flexibility to issuers to maintain cost sharing within a metal level. However, this administration has decided to revert back to narrower ranges. The tool is also in draft form, and the timing of the finalization is unknown. So again, all of the plans as presented may be subject to change. So if we go ahead and advance, I'll show you the one more slide. Is the changes in the de minimis ranges for defining the metal levels. The top table summarizes the ranges for the standard plan metals, and the bottom table is the cost sharing reduction variations. The first row of the top table are the current allowable metal level ranges for 2022, and the line below shows the proposed ranges for 2023. For example, the cold plan ranges will be decreasing from 76% to 82% to a narrower 78 to 82%. A higher AV range implies a richer plan for consumers, as they now must currently cover 12 to 18% of the plan costs in 2023 instead of 14 to 18%. And so this will imply potentially lower deductibles, copays, etc. The offset, however, is that a higher AV or actuarial value will have an upward impact on the premiums to be paid for the plan design. Next one. This is just some additional information. The Federal AV2 Actuarial Value Tool considers a limited set of healthcare key service categories when evaluating actuarial value. This table just illustrates several additional service categories that are defined in the standard plan designs, but are not necessarily a consideration when calculating the plan's actuarial value. And then just to clarify on the next slide, a few additional items. Preventive services are covered with no cost sharing for consumers. Services, as discussed, are for in-network care only, as out-of-network services are not subject to actuarial value rules. And then the deductibles and MOOPs, as presented unless specified, are for the individual level only, and family limits are 2 times the individual limit. So if we go to our first plan, the gold plan required changes. As you can see, the left column is the benefit categories of the healthcare services. And the first row, or the first column, is the current 2022 gold plan cost sharing for those healthcare services. On the bottom line, you can see in red that the current gold plan fell outside of the actuarial ranges, meaning that it wasn't in compliance with metal level restrictions. So we looked at 2 different plan options. One where we increased the maximum out of pocket from the $5,250 to $6,000. And option 2 where we looked at increasing the deductibles on the medical and pharmacy services. The committee selected option 1 and is proposing a plan design change where just the maximum out of pocket is increasing from $5,250 to $6,000. We'll go ahead and look at the silver plan. This is the standard non-cost sharing variant option. Similar to the gold presentation, the second column represents the current 2022 plans. The changes in the base data for 2023 in the actuarial value tool had the biggest impact on silver plan options, which necessitated more changes. We have the committee proposed and picked option 1 to be recommended, where the out-of-pocket maximum was increased from $8,600 to $9,100, which is the current proposed maximum out-of-pocket limit in the regulation that's proposed. And it also necessitated an increase in the medical deductible from the current $4,300 to $5,000 per individual. An additional option 2, which left the maximum out of pocket, was also considered, but necessitated larger increases in the medical deductible as well as an increase in the pharmacy deductible. The next step then is consideration of the CSR variants, and they have to be packaged or included together because the regulations require that each subsequent CSR variant must have cost sharing at least equal to or less than the prior or the prior cost sharing variant. And so here I am showing the 2022 combinations of current plan designs, and as you can see from the bottom row that none of them were compliant for 2023 and required review for all of them. The first, if we advance, the first option and the one recommended, go ahead and advance the slide. For the 73% plan, increase the medical deductible to $4,550 while increasing the maximum out of pocket to the $7,250 maximum allowable proposed out of pocket. The 87% plan increased the deductible from $650 to $675 while also increasing the maximum out of pocket from the $2,725 to $3,000. And for the 94% plan, the maximum out of pocket increased from $900 to $950. Now, unfortunately, yesterday we received notification from one of the insurers on the exchange indicating that a subsequent review of their analysis indicated that their 73% plan, as shown here, would not comply anymore with actuarial value. We've worked with all of the plans to develop an alternative option, and I'll present that in a minute. But we'll go ahead and look at the option 2, which really the only difference from option 1 and option 2 is that the 87% plan, instead of increasing the MOOP, only touched the deductible, increasing that from $650 to $825. And then if we go ahead and advance to the next slide, is option 3. And this is the now new plan that will be compliant with the actuarial value constraints based on the feedback from all insurers. We will now be, the new proposed would increase the deductible from $4,550 to $4,750. And we will be presenting that for review to the committee for their review and recommendation to the board. The next plan is the bronze non-HSA plan. This plan also required an adjustment, and we are proposing a small increase in the maximum out-of-pocket to bring the plan back into compliance, increasing the out-of-pocket from $8,700 to $8,800 in option 1, which is recommended by the committee, as opposed to increasing the deductible from $6,550 to $6,750 in option 2. And finally, there is the bronze HSA plan. The bronze HSA plan was compliant in the 2022 form, and so therefore required no change, and the committee chose not to pursue any changes or modifications to the plan to recommend the board. So the recommendation is to leave the plan alone. I will turn it back over to the board for discussion, or to Kelly, I apologize.
So the slide that's before you is really a summary of what Julie had just gone over, and also outlining with the asterisk on the bottom the newly proposed option 3, indicating the change there as well. So at this point, I'd just like to ask if there are any questions or concerns about the recommended plans before we move on to the vote.
This is Charlie Klippel. Are there any questions about the plans? Okay, look, I want to thank the committee and certainly Julie and her team, Kelly, Susan. I know there's a ton of work that goes into this thing, and we're all very reliant on your efforts here, but it's really helpful presentation and very good one. You've got one here that's subject to going back to the committee, and I'm just trying to think a little bit about the vote on that one. I think we could approve it subject to the committee's approval, but we can think about sort of the process there. So I'm going to propose that we take votes on these proposals. But again, I don't want to, if there's no further discussion on them.
Mr. Chairman, I just have a generic comment.
Sure.
And I would welcome my fellow board members to chime in. This is, I think, my second or maybe my third time through this process of approving the plans. And obviously, it's the out-of-pocket costs for our consumers are mind-blowing. And we know generally unaffordable. And each year we, to meet the AV requirements, we are increasing those. I would just say, in a generic sense and really not specific to today's vote, that kind of analogous to the death spiral comment that I made on the assessment, that this will spell, continued challenges unless we as a body decide that we have some role in advocating for improvements in the overall rate of cost growth and cost of care. And I know exchanges across the country have taken various approaches to that larger question. Those disembodied applause, it's always kind of weird, but but I do think, I feel as a board member, I don't really have much of but a choice but to approve these. On the other hand, we as an organization, I think as we see this inexorable rise in out-of-pocket costs for consumers, have an obligation to say, what is our role in making our plans affordable for the people that we serve? And obviously, it's not going to be a huge role, but I think we have to start thinking about ways in which we start lending our voice to the work that Vicki's doing, that the governor is championing, that making concrete steps towards working with our partners, the plans, to start driving down these costs. Otherwise, I fear that 5 more years of this, and there won't be really anybody who's able to afford a plan on the exchange.
I fully agree with you. I think it's a very important point. I think what we are proving here really is, how to spread the pain. And what we really need to do at some point is be part of the larger solution. We can't solve it here, but we can definitely add it to our agenda in a more deliberate way. And I think it comes to the question of reducing healthcare costs in the state generally, which is a huge lift, but something we need to be a part of. At least my view is I completely agree with you. So Ted, I think, had a comment, and let me give him the floor.
Yeah, thanks so much, Charlie, and appreciate the Commissioner Gifford's comments. I have been for several years OHA, the Office of Healthcare Advocate, trying to encourage the annual rate review process to be used to bring in specific high-cost providers to justify and explain their prices. And I really view that as an extension of my duties as a board member here and as a member of the health plan benefits and qualifications. We really have to get at the root cause. Couldn't agree more with Commissioner Gifford there. And once again, OHA will be making that effort to try to create transparency and accountability on the part of the providers. It's specific high-cost providers that are charging specific prices for specific drugs and specific procedures that lead to these unaffordable cost shares. Thanks, Charlie.
Thank you, Ted. And again, I agree with you on this point. Phil.
Yeah, I appreciate Commissioner Gifford's thoughts on this thing as well. I mean, one of the things I've tried to do since I've been on the board is sort of point out the plight of the people that don't receive subsidies. Now that number used to be in the 20s, 25% or so. It's gone down some because of the expanded subsidy programs. But nonetheless, we still have a chunk of people that rely on us totally to provide them with affordable choices because they're paying 100% of the premium and they're paying 100% of their cost share. So for those people, these kind of increases are particularly acute. When you add in the cost shares and when you add the subsidies and the CSRs together, that does a lot to kind of ameliorate the effect of this thing. But for the folks that are paying 100% of both sides of that thing, it really is a tough problem. I don't know how we're going to get at this thing unless we get a group that sits down and comes up with some concrete sort of suggestions about what the board ought to take on. Because I don't know how helpful these kind of general comments are once a year when we're approving the plans.
Well, I agree with that as well, Paul. I like Ted's approach. I think it feels very practical and sort of granular. I think there are other issues, and I also like the commissioner's thought that we really need to do this as a consortium. And the good news is that we're a very credible voice, so we need to use that voice. And so, James, I think the request here is fairly straightforward, which is that we, following Paul's idea, we really kind of focus on this as an issue, that is advocacy for cost containment in the plans we offer in the state, and both what is our advocacy position and who are our allies and colleagues and consortium partners in making that case. It's a hard and important thing to do. So,
Mr. Chairman, very quickly, Vicky's organization, OHS, I think that's part of their charge is to look at specifically these challenges and come up with potential solutions. And she's also chair of the health cabinet that I participate in. And this is the continuous discussion topic, that top of topic at that group as well. So Access Health will become more active. Well, we're already engaged and active, but maybe we need to get our hands a little bit more dirty and advocate, working more aggressively with OHS and the health cabinet in this effort. But there's a lot of effort. There's a lot of work going on from Vicky, both through OHS and the health cabinet, to start addressing these issues. So Vicky, I don't know if you want to comment on that, Vicky, but go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, James. Yes, I mean, I think Commissioner Gifford got to it. We're trying to do a lot. In fact, this session to get the benchmark being data. Yep. Get data. It's hard to take action without the detailed data. Yep. So we will be collecting a lot of spending data. We've already been doing it in self-funded plans too, fully insured plans, and be able to see where those specific cost drivers are to make concrete policy decisions with data behind it. That's been some of our trouble before, is that we haven't had the data. We all think we know where the costs are, and I think a lot of us do know it, but you still have to use data to drive your decisions. And I think that effort, that's only one piece of the pie, though. Ted's, there's lots of ideas out there.
Folks, I'm gonna make an executive move here. I'm worried that we're gonna lose people, and I would like to do the votes on the plans, just so they can move forward on those. So if there's no objection to doing that, can I move the votes forward for just the plan approvals? Not to diminish this debate. We need to take this on as part of our mission.
Charlie, I'm okay with that. I actually have to jump to a mandatory meeting. Is there a way to be recorded in the affirmative on the plan design votes, knowing that I can't?
I'll be your proxy.
I don't think I can wait for all the motions, but
I'll be your proxy, and we'll see if that works. But I think okay. Yes.
I give you my proxy. How's that?
Thank you so much. All right. With no further ado, if you all would bear with me for just a few more minutes, let's do the votes here. And could I ask, and they're all unfortunately separate, so we're going to do them that way. A motion to approve option 1 presented by Wakely for the standard gold plan for plan year 2023. Charlie Klippel, yes. And Vicky Beltry, yes.
Mr. Chair, is there a motion?
Oh, I need a motion. I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Paul,
I'll make the motion that we adopt option 1.
Thank you. Paul, we'll take you as a second.
Yep.
Klippel, yes.
Paul Philpott.
Yes.
Claudio Gualtieri. Dietrich Gifford. Frank Ritter.
Yes.
Steve Hernandez.
Yes.
Theodore Doolittle. Mr. Doolittle. Mr. Doolittle's on the phone. Cece Woods.
Yes.
Thomas McNeil. Mr. McNeil.
Yes.
Victoria Beltry,
Yes, by proxy.
Matthew Brackman. Mr. Doolittle, are you voting in affirmative?
Yes, I am, with mixed emotions, but yes.
Okay, thank you.
Second vote, please, a motion to approve the Wakely option 1 presented by Wakely on the standard silver plan for 2023. Motion?
Yes, this is Grant Ritter. I make the motion to accept option 1.
Thank you, Grant. Second?
Seconded, CC Woods.
Thank you. Charlie Klippel, yes.
Paul Philpott,
Yes.
Claudio Gualtieri, Deidre Gifford, Grant Ritter,
Yes.
Steven Hernandez,
Yes.
Theodore Doolittle,
Yes.
CC Woods,
Yes.
Thomas McNeil,
Yes.
Victoria Beltry,
Yes, by proxy.
Matthew Brackman. Thank you.
Next one, motion to approve the silver 87% option 1 and the silver 94% option 1 on behalf of the exchange staff as the standard silver plan variance for the 87 and 94% CSR plans for 2023.
Yes. Hi, this is Grant Ritter. I make the motion to accept the option 1 for the silver 87 plan and the silver option 1 for the silver 94 plan.
Thanks, Grant. Second?
Second by CC.
second.
Thank you. Klippel, yes.
Paul Philpott,
Yes.
Claudio Gualtieri, Deidre Gifford, Grant Ritter,
Yes.
Steven Hernandez,
Yes.
Theodore Doolittle,
Yes.
CC Woods,
Yes.
Thomas McNeil,
Yes.
Victoria Beltry,
Yes.
Matthew Brackman. Victoria Beltry by proxy, right, Mr.
Thank
Chair?
you.
Okay, thank you.
So this next one's a little more complicated just because there's some TBD in it. A motion to approve option 3 presented by Wakely Consulting as the standard silver 73% CSR plan for 2023. As long as all carriers are able to comply with the federal regulations with this plan and the Health Plan Benefits and Qualifications Advisory Committee recommends this plan at a subsequent meeting.
Okay. Hi, this is Grant Ritter. I'll make that motion. It's a little complicated to restate.
We'll
but-
take it as
but
read. Thanks,
I'll
Grant.
make the motion to accept that option 3 plan for
Thank you.
silver 73.
Second? Uh-oh.
Paul second.
Thanks, Paul. Klippel, yes.
Paul Philpott,
Yes.
Claudio Gualtieri, Deidre Gifford, Grant Ritter,
Yes.
Steven Hernandez,
Yes.
Theodore Doolittle,
Yes.
CC Woods,
Yes.
Thomas McNeil,
Yes.
Victoria Beltry,
Yes, by proxy.
and Matthew Brackman. Thank you.
Next to a motion to approve option 1 presented by Wakely as the standard bronze non-HSA plan for 2023.
Yeah. Hi, this is Grant Ritter. I make a motion to accept the option 1 for the non-HSA standard plan for the bronze at the bronze tier.
Thank you, Grant. I appreciate your efforts here.
McNeil,
Second,
I seconded.
Tom McNeil, thank you. Klippel, yes.
Paul Philpott,
Yes.
Claudio Gualtieri, Deidre Gifford, Grant Ritter,
Yes.
Steven Hernandez,
Yes.
Hernandez, thank you. Theodore Doolittle,
Yes.
CC Woods,
Yes.
Thomas McNeil,
Yes.
Victoria Beltry,
Yes, by proxy again.
and Matthew Brackman. Thank you.
And then finally, a motion to approve the existing standard HSA bronze plan presented by Wakely as the standard HSA bronze plan for 2023.
Okay. Hi, this is Grant. I make a motion to accept the existing HSA bronze plan for 2023.
Thank you.
Second, CC Woods.
Thank you, CC. Klippel, yes.
Paul Philpott,
Yes.
Claudio Gualtieri, Deidre Gifford, Grant Ritter,
Yes.
Steven Hernandez,
Yes.
Theodore Doolittle,
Yes.
CC Woods,
Yes.
Thomas McNeil,
Yes.
Victoria Beltry,
Yes, by proxy again.
and Matthew Brackman. Thank you.
All right, thanks for that. I appreciate we kind of ran through it. Unfortunately, James, we're past, I think, our deadline here. So a little bit of thinking on your part as to where, if anywhere, to go from here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think we could defer Susan's presentation to next month.
Absolutely.
That's fantastic. Susan, I apologize for that, but that would be very helpful. Look, with 1 minute, I want to thank this board for its diligence. You are a terrific set of stewards for this organization. You've raised some important questions, and I want to thank the team at the Exchange for their diligence. I think you guys have really made a terrific effort to try to be as cost sensitive to the members you serve as possible. I really sincerely believe that. I think because we're about to do something that we haven't done in 7 years, I know we've asked for a little more time to consider it. I think that will be time well spent. But again, I want to express my appreciation to everybody here for the work that's gone in behind that. Thank you all for the votes on the products and for the work of the committee and Wakely behind that too. So with that, James, last word, and then we'll vote an adjournment.
Thank you much. We look forward to engage with the board in the coming weeks to walk them through our budget process and where our budget is, and hopefully get them to much more comfortable than they currently are with the request that the modest request that we are asking with respect to the assessment increase. So again, our costs are going to continue to climb like everything else, and so again, we'll get into the details of that, but I do appreciate the board's support that we've always had over the years, and we hope to engage with them, get them more information, more clarity about where we are, and more importantly, where we are going, and also importantly is the impact to our customers. So more to come on that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Could I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved, CC.
Thank you, CC.
Second by Ted.
Thanks, Ted. Charlie Klippel, yes.
Paul Philpott,
Yes.
Claudio Gualtieri, Deidre Gifford, Ron Ritter,
Yes.
Ivan Hernandez,
Yes.
Peter Doolittle,
Yes.
CC Woods,
Yes.
Tomas McNeil,
Yes.
Victoria Beltry,
Yes, I'm pushing my proxy here a little bit, but yes.
and Matthew Brackman. Thank you.
Thank you all very, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.